Peter Pan and the Adventure of Never Growing Up. Once upon a time, in a charming little home in London, there lived three children named Wendy, John, and Michael Darling. Their days were filled with laughter, games, and above all, the wonderful stories their older sister Wendy would tell them. Wendy had a gift for storytelling. Her favorite tales were about Peter Pan, the boy who never grew up, and his thrilling adventures in a magical place called Neverland. John and Michael adored listening to Wendy's stories every night before bed. She told them about Peter Pan, the brave and mischievous boy who could fly, his fairy friend Tinker Bell, and his band of lost boys, who lived with him on the enchanted island. Wendy spoke of fierce battles with the evil pirate Captain Hook, who had a hook for a hand after Peter cut it off in a duel. The boys listened in awe, imagining the excitement of living in Neverland, where you never had to grow up. But little did the darling children know, Peter Pan was real, and he had been listening to Wendy's stories from outside the nursery window. Every night, he would fly to their home and sit on the windowsill, enchanted by the way Wendy brought his adventures to life. He felt proud to be the hero of her stories. One evening, Mr. and Mrs. Darling were preparing to go to a party. Mr. Darling, a strict man, heard Wendy telling yet another Peter Pan story and sighed, "Oh, Wendy, don't you think it's time you outgrew these fantasies? It's time to be more mature." Wendy felt a little sad but continued to tell the story as her parents left. That night, as the children slept, Peter Pan quietly flew into the nursery, searching for something he had lost during one of his visits, his shadow. Peter had brought along his tiny fairy friend, Tinker Bell, to help him search. While Peter and Tinker Bell were busy looking for the shadow, Wendy suddenly woke up and gasped. There, right in front of her, was Peter Pan, the very boy she had been telling stories about for so long. "Are you really Peter Pan?" Wendy asked, her eyes wide with excitement. Peter grinned. "I am. And I love the way you tell my adventures, Wendy. But I seem to have lost my shadow. Could you help me attach it?" Wendy giggled and sewed Peter's shadow back to his feet. As she worked, Peter told her about his home in Neverland, where he never had to grow up and where every day was filled with fun, adventure, and excitement. "You should come to Neverland with me," Peter said. "I'll teach you to fly, and you can tell your stories to the lost boys who live there with me." Wendy thought about it for a moment. "I'll go," she said, "but only if my brothers John and Michael can come too." Peter smiled. "Deal." With a sprinkle of Tinker Bell's magical fairy dust and a thought of happy memories, Peter taught Wendy, John, and Michael to fly. Soon, they were soaring out the window, over the rooftops of London, and on their way to Neverland, a place where adventure awaited them at every corner. Neverland was even more magical than Wendy had imagined. There were towering forests, sparkling lagoons, and creatures unlike any they had ever seen before. The Lost Boys, a group of adventurous children who had been brought to Neverland by Peter, greeted them with excitement. Wendy quickly became like a mother to them, telling them stories, while John and Michael made new friends. But it wasn't all fun and games in Neverland. Danger lurked in the form of the villainous Captain Hook and his band of pirates. Captain Hook was Peter Pan's greatest enemy, and he had one mission: to seek revenge on Peter for cutting off his hand and feeding it to a crocodile. Now, the crocodile followed Hook everywhere, hoping to eat the rest of him. One day, while Peter was off on an adventure, Captain Hook spotted Wendy and the boys. With his eye on revenge, Hook fired a cannon at them. Peter, always quick and brave, swooped in just in time to save them. He asked Tinker Bell to guide Wendy, John, Michael, and the Lost Boys to a safe hiding place while he dealt with Hook. But not everyone in Neverland was happy to see Wendy. Tinker Bell, Peter's loyal fairy friend, had grown very jealous of the attention Peter was giving Wendy. Fueled by jealousy, Tinker Bell tried to turn the Lost Boys against Wendy, telling them that Wendy was not to be trusted. When Peter found out, he was disappointed in Tinker Bell and told her she had to stay away from everyone for a week. Meanwhile, the adventures in Neverland continued. One day, the Lost Boys and the Darling brothers were captured by the island's native tribe. The chief accused them of kidnapping his daughter, Tiger Lily. Peter, however, had seen the real culprit, It was Captain Hook. With his quick thinking and bravery, Peter rescued Tiger Lily and returned her to her father. Grateful, the chief threw a grand celebration, filled with music, dancing, and laughter. But despite the fun, Wendy felt a pang of homesickness. She missed her parents and her cozy home in London. "We've had such wonderful adventures," Wendy said, "but it's time to go home. Our parents must be worried, and I miss them." Wendy's words made Peter Pan sad. He didn't want Wendy to leave. He hated the thought of her growing up and becoming an adult, like her father had urged. "Why do you want to grow up, Wendy? We can stay here forever, having adventures and never worrying about grown-up things." But Wendy's mind was made up. She missed her family, and she knew John and Michael did too. She suggested that they take the lost boys with them to London, where her parents could adopt them. As the group prepared to leave, trouble was brewing. Captain Hook had captured Tinker Bell and tricked her into revealing the location of Peter Pan's secret hideout. With this information, Hook stormed Peter's hideout and captured Wendy, John, Michael, and the lost boys. He left Peter behind with a ticking bomb, hoping to end Peter Pan once and for all. Luckily, Tinker Bell managed to escape and flew to Peter just in time to warn him. She bravely grabbed the bomb and flung it far away, saving Peter's life. Peter, forever grateful, rushed to the pirate ship to rescue his friends. A fierce battle broke out on the pirate ship, with Peter and Hook facing off one last time. They clashed swords, with Hook determined to defeat Peter. But Peter was quick and clever. As the battle raged on, Hook slipped and tumbled overboard, right into the waiting jaws of the hungry crocodile. The villainous pirate was gone for good. With Captain Hook defeated, Peter and his friends took control of the pirate ship. Using Tinker Bell's magic fairy dust, the ship soared into the sky, flying the children back to London. When they arrived home, Mr. and Mrs. Darling were overjoyed to see Wendy, John, and Michael. They welcomed the lost boys into their home with open arms, offering them a place in their family. As the children told their parents about their incredible adventures in Neverland, Mr. Darling stood by the window, gazing up at the sky. There, far above the clouds, he thought he saw the tail of the pirate ship disappearing into the stars. Smiling to himself, Mr. Darling whispered, "I remember that ship from my own childhood. Perhaps, after all, Peter Pan is real." And from that day forward, Wendy, John, and Michael kept Peter Pan in their hearts, knowing that whenever they needed him, Peter and Neverland would always be just a dream away.